All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do a few examples for those of you that are still kind of struggling with what's going on. I have just a choice of compounds that we can work on, and I think the more you look at what's going on, the more examples you immerse yourself in, I think it helps understand the concept a little bit better. Okay, so let's take a look at this first one. It reads iron 3 acetate. So the very first thing I want to do is I'm going to cut it in half where I have my cation and my anion. So I'm going to cut it off here, and my positive ion is going to be the iron 3 and my negative ion is going to be acetate. Okay, so first of all, I've got to figure out what the symbol for iron is. And so if you guys go ahead and look at your periodic tables and you search for iron, you know that the symbol is Fe. So coming back to this, that Roman numeral 3, what's cool about it is that I don't have to go and look for the oxidation number. That tells me what the oxidation number is. So since this is a Roman numeral 3, it's going to be a positive 3. As far as the anion, I noticed that it has the ATE ending. So from what we learned in class, that tells me that that is going to be a polyatomic ion. And so this is where you're going to go back and look at your ion sheet, and I'm going to look for acetate. Okay, so there it is right here. And so I'm going to go ahead and write that down. So it's C2H3O2 with a -1 charge. So C3H2, or sorry about that, it was actually C2. C2H3O2, -1. Okay, so this is where I'm ready to crisscross the charges. And here's this 3 that I'm going to crisscross, and here's this 1. Okay, this 3, because I'm crossing it to a polyatomic ion, it is bigger than 1. I'm going to have to put that polyatomic ion completely in parentheses. Okay, minus not the oxidation number, just the rest of the ion. This C, this 2, this H, this 3, the O, and the 2, they're all part of the ion. So I'm going to go ahead and close it in parentheses, and I'm going to put this 3 over here when I crisscross it. This 1 gets crossed here, but again, we don't show 1s. I mean, it's technically crossed, but we're not going to show the 1. So therefore, as I rewrite this, I know that my compound is going to be called, or it's going to be written as such, Fe, then parentheses, C2H3O2, parentheses 3. Okay, and that's going to be the formula for iron 3 acetate. All right, so let's take a look at another example. Let me go ahead and clear this out. Okay, let's look at the next one, aluminum carbonate. Okay, same thing. You want to go ahead and cut it in half. All right, so this tells me that my positive ion is the one on the left. It's always the first one, and my negative ion is the one on the right. Okay, notice that there's not a Roman numeral, so that means that, I mean, it doesn't tell me what the charge is. I'm going to have to look it up. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the periodic table, find aluminum, there it is, and I notice that its oxidation state is a positive 3. So it's going to be Al positive 3, right? So I'm going to go back, and then I'm going to write down Al positive 3. And then the carbonate, notice it ends in 8. So again, this is a concept we learned today. It's going to be a polyatomic ion. So therefore, I'm going to go ahead and look at the ion sheet, look up carbonate, and there it is. Okay, so my formula for that is going to be CO3 -2. All right, so once I have this down, same thing I did in the previous previous example, I'm going to take the oxidation numbers, just the numbers themselves, not the plus or minus, and I'm going to crisscross them. So this 3 is going to be crossed to this polyatomic ion. Same thing I said before. If it's crossing to a polyatomic ion and it's a number greater than 1, you're going to want to put that in parentheses. Again, the entire ion, the capital C, the capital O, and the 3. So that's going to be crossed outside, just like this. This 2, I'm going to go ahead and cross it to the aluminum. Of course, the aluminum's not going to have a parentheses because it's not a polyatomic ion. It doesn't have more than one element, so we just keep it the way it is. And so when I rewrite it, it's going to be Al 2, and then parentheses, capital C, capital O, subscript 3, because that's part of the ion, and then close your parentheses with a 3 outside. Okay, and that is a formula for aluminum carbonate. All right, let's go ahead and do a few more. All right, let's see. Let's go ahead and do the next one, which is lead 4 chlorate. Okay, so this one also has a Roman numeral. So the good thing is that I don't have to look for its oxidation number. The only thing I need to do is find out what lead is. And again, the left-hand side, we always start with the positive ion and then the negative. Okay, so I want to find out what the symbol for lead is. I can look in two places. Okay, I could either look for the symbol here, and I know that if I look up lead, it's, you know, the symbols, the letters in the symbol are capital P, lowercase b. But I can also look here and find that lead is given to me here. Okay, here's lead 2 and lead 4. So again, it tells me it's if it's lead 2, it's going to be Pb positive 2, and lead 4 is Pb positive. I'm sorry, Pb positive 2 and Pb positive 4. Okay, so we know it's lead 4. So there's my symbol with oxidation number. And then I have to look up chlorate. And again, this tells me that it's a polyatomic ion. All right, so then I'm going to go ahead and look at my polyatomic ions. It's chlorate. Let's just make sure we know that. And I'm going to look. There it is. If I look here, there's chlorate, and it's going to be ClO3 negative 1. Okay, ClO3 negative 1. So let's go ahead and write that. So ClO and then subscript 3 negative 1. Okay, so as before, I'm going to go ahead and crisscross those. So this 4 is going to be crossed, and remember, I'm crossing to a polyatomic ion. This number is greater than 1. So far all my examples have been that you're going to put parentheses if you're crossing the number greater than 1 to a polyatomic ion. So therefore this is going to be a 4, and now I'm going to cross this 1. Okay, I can cross this 1 all I want, but I'm not going to show it in the final formula. So as I rewrite this, it's going to be Pb. I'm not going to show this 1 because we don't show 1s in formulas. And then parentheses, capital C, lowercase l, capital O, subscript 3, parentheses, and a 4. Okay, so that is how you would get the formula for lead 4 chlorate. Okay, so those are just a few examples on what you would do. And again, the rules don't change. That's just something you have to keep in mind. If you're crisscrossing numbers that are greater than 1 to polyatomic ions, put parentheses on it. And don't forget that when you write this ion, for example, when we wrote ClO3, that's the entire ion. Nothing there changes. Okay, you don't switch the 3, you don't change anything. The only thing that's being crossed are the oxidation numbers. Those are the things that are the only things that move. Other than that, nothing else moves in the formulas, okay? So let's take a look at the naming. Okay, so what happens when we're being asked to name it and they give us the formula? Okay, so kind of like I did before, I'm going to go ahead and split it. Okay, so I'm going to write it a little bit bigger. Just, it'll give me a little bit more room for me to show these changes. So that's the first one you see there on the left. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it right there. And again, this is my positive ion. This is my negative ion. First of all, what I want to do is I want to decide if this symbol will have a Roman numeral. If I don't know, I'm going to check. So what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and look at the list of Roman numerals. Remember, it said PB. So I'm going to look through and see if I see PB, which I do. So this tells me that this will have a Roman numeral in the name. If I didn't see it here, then I wouldn't worry about it. But because it is here, I've got to figure out if I'm using lead 2 or lead 4. And this is a part where we're working backwards. So the question is, are we using lead 2 or are we using lead 4? So how do we find out? Okay, so you're pretty much working your way backwards. What you're going to do is you're going to take your subscripts, and remember, they had to have come from the top. That's where they came from originally. So you're going to cross them back to where they were. So this used to belong to this element, and it was a positive. And this little number here used to belong to this guy right here, and it was a negative. So if we look at it, these ions used to be like this. That's what they used to be like. Okay, so now that I have these two ions, okay, I just have to look them up and find the name. So I already know that this is lead because I looked it up, and I'm using a Roman numeral because it was part of the list, and it's going to be a Roman numeral 2 because its oxidation number is 2. This one, if I don't know what the name is, I know it's a polyatomic ion. I just look at my list of ions in the ion sheet. So I'm going to go ahead and look up PO4. So here I am at my ions, and I'm going to look up PO4, and there it is. Okay, right here. So I'm pointing at it. It's phosphate. Okay, so it's PO4 negative 3. I'm not too concerned about getting the formula because I already have that, but I'm worried about getting the name. So I know that this ion is called phosphate. So now I can go back and say, you know what? All right, this is the symbol for the ion phosphate. And there, that would be the name for this compound, lead 2 phosphate. Okay. Keep in mind, we don't always use not parentheses, but Roman numerals. So let me pick an example where Roman numerals wouldn't be used. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this one. Okay, so you have CaSO4, and we want to name it. Okay, I'm going to tell you that most of the time, with the exception of ammonium, with the exception of this one, guys, okay, your cation consists of only one element. All right, so that's how I know where to put that line. So I know this is my first element, and I'm going to put that line. Unless it's ammonium, then, you know, in that case, it consists of nitrogen and hydrogen, but that's the only one. So this is my positive ion, and this one's my negative. So first of all, I'm going to look up the name for this if I don't know. If you look at your periodic table, that'll tell you. But before I even do that, I want to see, does it have a Roman numeral or not? Okay, and this is a part that that I was telling you that you want to go ahead and always refer to these green boxes. Okay, so I'm going to look up calcium. Notice it's not there. Okay, if calcium is not here, that automatically tells you I don't need Roman numerals. All right, so in that case, you know what? That makes it even easier for me. I know that this symbol is the symbol for the word calcium. I know it doesn't have a Roman numeral because it's not found in those green boxes. And now I just have to worry about finding the name for this polyatomic ion because it has two elements. And just like we did before, you're going to go ahead and look at your ion sheet, and we're going to look up, sorry, SO4, okay? And if you look, it's right there, okay? And the name for that is sulfate. Okay, make sure that you're careful. This one is SO4 and this one is SO3. Okay, the one with 4 oxygens is called sulfate. The one with 3 oxygens is called sulfite. So I've got to make sure that I'm spelling this correctly, otherwise it's going to be wrong. So it's sulfate. So I go back, there I am, and I know that this is calcium sulfate. Notice I didn't have to do the crisscross backwards that I did before. If you don't have a Roman numeral, there's no need to do that crisscross backwards. You just have to look at those ions, okay? So it's actually kind of easier when you don't have Roman numerals and you're naming it, because you don't have to figure out which one it is. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at a third one. Okay, let's look at this one. All right, and let me go ahead and clear everything out. It's number 8, because it's going to clear that here in a bit. Okay, here it is, and it is Fe parentheses capital N, capital O, 2, and then parentheses 2. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it in half. Again, with the exception of this one, right? With the exception of this one, all your cations only have one element, so that's not ammonium, and I know I'm going to cut it here because it's the element. This is going to be my positive ion, this is going to be my negative ion. Okay, so the first thing I want to decide, does it have a Roman numeral or not? Let's go to the green boxes. Okay, those are my green boxes. I'm going to look for Fe. There it is. It will have a Roman numeral because I have 2 versions of it. I have iron 2 and iron 3. I've got to figure out which one it is. So I'm going to go ahead and write this down. That I will need to figure it out. So is it iron positive 2 or is it iron positive 3? Okay, so now we have to go back and we have to crisscross backwards, right? Okay, so that means that this 2 came from here. So this is my positive ion and it's positive 2. Okay, right there and then, this tells me which iron was used. Okay, I used this one because that was a number that came from here. So this used to be Fe positive 2 before it became a compound. All right, so I know the first part of the name has iron Roman numeral 2. Okay, now my next task is to figure out what is this ion. So it's capital N, capital O, and a 2. It's on parentheses, so that ion is complete. All I have to do is look up the ion sheet. So remember, it's NO2. So let's look at the ion sheet. Let's look up NO2, and there it is. Again, making sure that you're looking at the spelling correctly. Remember, if it's NO2, it's nitrite because it has less oxygen than the nitrate, which is NO3. So this is nitrite, and that's very important because if you spell these again incorrectly, it's not going to be counted right. So it's iron 2 nitrite. Okay, and that is how you figure out the name for this particular compound. All right, guys, I'm going to tell you that it just takes practice, okay? You know the saying that Rome was not built in a day. Well, this takes some practice, and that's exactly why you guys are doing the assignments that you're doing, okay? If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I will be more than happy to help you. Anytime you have questions in class, make sure that you're asking, okay?